The Chumash Dvorim is different than all of the other four Chumashim that comprise Torah Shebiksav. The Gemara, there's even an opinion that it is not subject to the Yud Gimel Midos Torah Nidreshes Bohem, because of the fact that it, so to speak, is the words of Moshe, which Kaviyochel Rebbeinu Shalom agreed with, but it is the words of Moshe, whereas the other four books are the words Kaviyochel of the Rebbeinu Shalom that Moshe simply transcribed. So there's a difference between them. And the Chumash Dvorim is called Mishnah Torah. And it's based on the psukim that we have in this week's parsha, the beginning of the parsha. So the Torah describes for us that the Jewish people were located in this and this spot. Ha'il Moshe be'er es ha'Torah hazos livnei Yisrael. Moshe explained the Torah, be'er es ha'Torah, and that this be'ur of the Torah, the description of the Torah, the explanation of the Torah, comprises the book of Dvorim. Even though in the book of Dvorim we do have mitzvot which did not appear previously, especially in the parsha of Kiteitzei, but nevertheless, basically, the Chumash Dvorim is a review of the events in the desert and of the mitzvot. It's Moshe's take, so to speak, on what happened, and that comprises the Sefer. Now the Meforshim here say that this Sefer is really the bridge between Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh, because the Sefer already is, to a certain extent, the Torah Shebal Peh that Moshe said that explains the Torah Shebiksav that was written before. And Torah Shebal Peh was and is the basic foundation of Yadus, because Mishpotim Bal Yedom, that refers to Torah Shebal Peh. The Torah Shebiksav became universal. And the non-Jewish world also possesses it. But Torah Shebal Peh remained the province of the Jewish people, the possession of the Jewish people. Now, the Torah Shebiksav presupposes that there'll be a Torah Shebal Peh, because no written law can cover all circumstances. No written law on the basis of the writing itself is explanatory in every situation. And we have it in the Torah of all the examples, but let's say, Zochar es Yom HaShabbos l'kadsho. Well, how do we do that? It's a wonderful idea. Shabbos is a wonderful idea. How do we transfer it into actuality? How do we make it the holy day? So the Torah says, Lo sasivo kol malacha. You shall not do malacha on Shabbos. So what's the definition of malacha? So without Torah Shebal Peh, without a definition, or at least a framework for what malacha is, So it becomes impossible to deal with Shabbos, because it's a great idea, it's nebulous, and the whole world accepts it, that you need a day off, so to speak. But how, what, where? How does it become actual? I mentioned to you before that there was the first Jewish Supreme Court justice in the United States. So his name was Louis Dembitz Brandeis. And he was a lawyer in Louisville, Kentucky. And he had an uncle who was an observant religious Jew by the name of Louis Dembitz. And Brandeis writes in his memoirs that when he was a student and he was a young lawyer starting out, he would go to spend Shabbat with his uncle. And he describes how beautiful it was and how restful and how it was just, it was mein olam haba. And he writes there, regretfully, he says, I wish I could have a Sabbath like that again. But then he says, but without the restrictions. So he missed the point, because without the restriction it isn't. Then it's just a day off. And so how do we define melacha? So that we have a very big Masechta in the Talmud, Masechta Shabbos. We have a perek there, Klal Godel, that defines the 39 types of melacha, but it's always being renewed. And the Gemara did not have an iPhone. So what's the din of an iPhone on Shabbos? So that we have no Mishnah, but we have categories of Torah Shebaal Peh, and based on the categories of Torah Shebaal Peh, we continue to create Torah Shebaal Peh. For every situation, for every discovery. Sometimes it takes a long time to get it sorted out in halacha. It's not that simple. But it's a process of evolvement and of life. It's a living Torah. Whereas if it's just written in the book, it really is just words and parchment and nothing else. Question of electricity. Science has not yet decided what electricity is. How do we define it? There were all sorts of ideas, and now they say it's particles, which pieces, but no one knows what it is. And therefore it becomes difficult to deal with in halacha as well, because it's not subject to exact definition. So that's the task of Torah Shebaal Peh. And so Moshe Be'er Satorah Hazos. Moshe begins to explain this Torah. So Moshe is really beginning Torah Shebaal Peh here. He's explaining to us what went before, so that we somehow will have a framework in which to be able to judge situations and come to halachic conclusions. And Torah says, lo sigzo, right? Lo signo. Don't steal. Everybody agrees. What's stealing? What's the definition of stealing? And And that's also subject to interpretation. Why am I entitled to charge you $12 million for a painting that's a piece of canvas and oil that's worth $1.68? Am I not stealing? Why isn't that stealing? And the same thing is true in all sorts of things. So the bare statement of Lo Tignov, which we all agree to, which the world also agrees to, but it's a world of Geneva, because they have a completely different standard of what the word means. So this is where Torah Sheba'al Peh enters. You have Lo Sirtzach, not to kill. Well, everybody agrees to that, except. What's the except? Can you kill the people that are floating balloons from Gaza that burn down our forests? The whole question of abortion, all of these questions, that's the definition of Lo Sirtzach. And since the words themselves, Lo Sirtzach, will not explain that, so it doesn't mean that under no circumstances can you take human life. And there are people that are like that. Or it doesn't mean that there are circumstances that it's not only permissible, but it's imperative to do so. So all of that is Torah Sheba'al Peh. All of that is based on an interpretation. Now our interpretations go back to Sinai. They go back to Moshe, because he's the one that created this structure. So therefore, that's our tradition, that's what makes us the Jewish people. But in the long history of the Jewish people, there have been many that have arisen and have said that Torah Sheba'al Peh is not valid, God forbid. The Tzdokim, the Karoim, in our time we have plenty. So they have to invent their own Torah Sheba'al Peh, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. So the Karoim sat in dark all of Shabbat, because that was they had no way of interpreting the written posuk of Lo Sevaru Eish B'chol Mashvaseichem B'yom HaShavos. And we have numerous other instances. And if you want to lahavdil, you could say that's the question of constitutional law. You have a constitution, these are the basic laws of the country. The court interprets it in every generation differently, how it looks. So this concept of Torah Sheba'al Peh is the great Chidush of Moshe. And this Chidush, so to speak, is reflected here in Chumash Dvorim, and that's why it says, Hoel Moshe Be'er as Divrei HaTorah Hazos Livnei Yisrael. Moshe, this is the beginning of the process which carries the Jewish people throughout all of the generations.